I presume you're here in order to learn of Magecraft. I'll have you know, there's no room for the weak-willed in this course, and despite your best efforts, the sorcery of our time is but a fraction of what it once was in the Age of Gods. Much of the craft is established through pedigree, and the culture of mages is riddled with deception and moral depravity. That said, if you insist, I shall do my best to educate you in this miserable, yet fascinating world.
In our previous lesson, I provided a more advanced overview of how we categorize heroic spirits into different classes. It is a hybrid system, consisting of classes utilized by the Throne of Heroes, as well as classes more or less invented by mages for convenient labeling. Typically, a servant is only able to utilize the noble phantasms associated with their legend, but there are loopholes that allow heroes to access a more diverse arsenal. One such case is heroic spirit Emiya, whose tracing ability has him creating functional replicas of legendary weapons. That said, the exception I wish to cover today is just as impressive. Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, is famous not only for his reality-ripping Ea, but also his tremendous storehouse of ancient treasures. By counting his Gate of Babylon as a noble phantasm, he effectively retains a limitless supply of weapons after death. The concern thus expands to finding out exactly what is contained in that storehouse. For today's lesson, I will go over the contents and lore of Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon. Also referred to as the Divine Gate, the Gate of Babylon is a storehouse Gilgamesh commissioned to fit all of his treasures. By gathering his treasures in one place, he can connect himself to the gate interdimensionally and access the storehouse no matter where he is in the universe. Essentially, there is an invisible door through which he can reach in and withdraw items from his treasury. The wider he expands this gate, the more items he can conjure at once. Even without said items in hand, Gilgamesh can fire them from the gate as projectiles. This treasury can be physically accessed via the Door of Babylon. It remains intact long after Gilgamesh's death. In life, Gilgamesh was very protective of his treasures, and he worried the goddess Ishtar would covet them. As a preventative measure, he built several decoy treasuries filled with traps, protecting the main vault. Now, rumor has it that the Door of Babylon is hidden by none other than the tombstone of the Egyptian pharaoh Nitocris. This implies that others had already discovered the gate, such as the Persian king Darius and Darius III. Still, even if one were to find the entrance, one cannot simply part its doors, not without a key. The key of the king's law, Bab-Ilu, is a large golden key with a complex design. In fact, its design is constantly changing, rendering it useless to any who do not understand its shape. To that end, Bab-Ilu is less a literal key and more so a symbol of Gilgamesh's authority. Technically, there are actually two keys. The one I just described is used to access the deeper regions of the treasury. During life, Gilgamesh had a spare key created simply to unlock the front gate. Arrogantly, however, he eventually reasoned that none would dare enter without his permission anyway, and so he discarded the spare key. While Gilgamesh deems it useless, mages can harness the spare key as a catalyst in summoning him. Regardless of the truth, Gilgamesh loves claiming that he collected all the world's treasures into the Gate of Babylon. Legend has rendered this claim infallible, such that his treasury transcends his own knowledge of what's inside. Even treasures created after the king's passing are considered to be successors to concepts and prototypes stored within. The idea is that the gate contains tools that represent humanity's hopes and dreams for the future. Gilgamesh lays claim to those dreams, believing that anything of value belongs to him, even things he is not aware of. So long as a treasure can be traced back to his achievements as the original hero, it is an extension of the gate. This means that, to an extent, every noble phantasm used by another servant has a nameless prototype that exists within his treasury. These prototypes often lack fame and fortune, and yet Gilgamesh tries to take credit for their successors. It is ironic then how he refers to projections as mere imitations, as one could argue his versions are no more authentic. After all, they too derive their value from having famous imitations. The only weapon within the Gate of Babylon that was never replicated is Ea, the Sword of Rupture. While Ea can be called a sword, it was created before the concept of a sword ever existed, which explains its bizarre shape. Given that Ea was made exclusively for the Keystone of Heaven, aka Gilgamesh, nobody else can use or replicate it. In fact, there are very few things that are not contained within the Gate of Babylon. Noble phantasms based off a hero's accomplishments, such as Heracles' God Hand, simply cannot be obtained by a different hero. Certain divine constructs such as Avalon, Kavacha, and Kundala also elude him. Naturally, artifacts entirely invented by alien species cannot possibly trace back to him either. While it is certainly easier to focus on what isn't in the gate, a lot more can be learned from studying what is there. Even if Gilgamesh doesn't fully know what his own treasury contains, we can find examples of what he actually makes use of. For instance, to counter against the various corpses of Angra Mainyu, Gilgamesh can draw out and spread a silver incense that wards off spirits. By altering the scent of the incense, he can even draw in spirits, should he ever want them gathered in one place. Certain heroes have a skill that protects them from arrows. Gilgamesh lacks this skill innately, but can achieve the same effect with a beautiful amulet. That said, it has its limits, shrinking as its power is used up. Beyond protection, the amulet can also be thrown as a grenade of sorts, exploding with a force matching its current size. An extension of this is the Auto Defender, a group of gold discs that intercept incoming attacks. They also retaliate, firing lightning bolts at nearby intruders. The very golden armor Gilgamesh wears into battle is also something he stores within the gate. To further bolster his defenses, Gilgamesh has access to the Shield of the Gods, a gigantic dome that can deflect other noble phantasms with ease. With enough force, though, even a shield as large as this can be destroyed. Gilgamesh, while not a typical mage, can still cast spells via the Dingir, a clay tablet that represents his authority to punish the gods. When protecting Uruk from demonic beasts, he also creates a series of artillery cannons which share the name. Technically, Dingir summons magical staves containing mystery from the Age of Gods. Those staves are what actually cast spells. Similar to his Dingir is the Tablet of Destinies, an ancient treasure that grants Gilgamesh the authority to rule the world and its gods. In legend, the monstrous bird Anzu once stole this tablet, plunging Mesopotamia into a period of darkness. Because Anzu did not deserve the tablet, it did nothing in his possession, yet order was restored once the tablet was passed on to Gilgamesh. In a similar vein, there is Gilgamesh's most prized treasure, Enkidu, the Chains of Heaven. Originally meant to bind him to the god's will, Enkidu instead became the king's beloved companion. These chains bind any god or demigod, turning their divinity against them. The Greek god Hades is famous for his cap of invisibility. Inevitably, Gilgamesh possesses what is considered to be the prototype to all concealment artifacts. When it comes to famous weapons, there's a prototype to Caladbolg, the drill-shaped sword of Fergus MacCroic. Another is the prototype for Daneslef, a famous Norse blade appearing in the Volsunga saga. Once a part of Fafnir's treasure hoard, Daneslef was a cursed blade, one that could not be returned to its sheath until first slaying a man. From the very same legend is Sigurd's sword, Gram. Assuming it truly does originate from Gilgamesh's collection, the prototype sword looks almost nothing like its successor. Both Gram and Caliburn are known as swords of selection, but even they share a common ancestor in Merodach, the original sin. This is Gilgamesh's go-to sword when testing an opponent to see if they're worthy of him drawing out Ea. Although less famous, Merodach is strong enough to shatter Caliburn in a clash. Roland's sword, Durendal, later inherited by Mandricardo, also has a prototype in the Gate of Babylon. Cuchulain's trusted spear, the Gay Bolg, apparently traces its origins back to a prototype in Gilgamesh's arsenal. It seems Gilgamesh's prototypes also found their way to Asia, such as the halberd comparable to heaven. It is said to precede Lubu's destructive weapon, God Force. Medusa's monstrous Gorgon form was beheaded by Perseus with the use of Harpe, a divine blade based off another prototype. Heracles famously used a bow called 9 Lives to slay the Lernaean Hydra, simultaneously striking its 100 heads. The prototype version in Gilgamesh's treasury is known as True 9 Lives. Some Mesopotamian weapons were famous in their own right. The war god Zababa once wielded 2 blades named after his children. Igalima and Sul Sagana are massive swords kept in the Gate of Babylon. One is made for cleaving entire fields and mountain ranges, while the other carves through the ocean, purifying the seas. In order to stop Tiamat's attack on Uruk, Gilgamesh entrusts Ritsuka Fujimaru with a golden dagger. Not only does it strike Tiamat in the head, but in doing so, the blade forms a mental landscape where Ritsuka and the primordial beast can speak with one another. Most of Gilgamesh's weapons are completely nameless and unknown. They include swords, lances, axes, hammers, scimitars, and scythes. It's worth noting that despite these weapons, Gilgamesh isn't especially skilled with any of them. He uses them for their sheer quantity, rather than mastering them individually. Miraculous, even by my standards, it appears Gilgamesh even keeps backup command spells in his treasury. It is likely because of this that the Moon Cell decided to seal him within the far side of the moon. As he proclaims, he doesn't follow the rules, he is the rules. Knowing that, it's no surprise that Gilgamesh would possess means of aerial travel. His golden ship, Vimana, is a version of the machine recorded within Indian legends. From its throne, he not only steers Vimana, but also opens the Gate of Babylon to launch projectiles. Within the Moon Cell, he also has a ship of light that allows him to exceed the speed of light and thwart Kiara Seshioin's attempt to cast him away. Sometimes, Gilgamesh can even be seen levitating in midair. This is due to another of his hidden treasures. The gate contains yet another weapon from ancient India, the Vajra, a device manifesting the power of Indra, India's god of lightning. As the people of Uruk wished for more advanced technology, so too did Gilgamesh. Through his Magecraft, he was able to create modern vehicles like his Gil machine, a golden motorcycle. I mentioned in our previous lesson that the Holy Grail goes by many names and takes many forms. Uruk had its own Grail, which inevitably wound up in the treasury. It's implied that this Grail isn't the only wish-granting artifact in his possession either. In life, Gilgamesh sought immortality through the Potion of Youth, even descending into the underworld to obtain it. Ultimately, this effort was in vain, as a snake stole the potion and shed its skin for the very first time. Even after accepting his mortality, Gilgamesh returned to the underworld and fetched another bottle which he keeps in the gate. In fact, communicating with the underworld is made easier with a mirror that connects him with the goddess Ereshkigal. The two of them have separate roles to play, but sometimes they can work together for a greater good. Though he detests snakes, Gilgamesh has deemed hydras worth collecting, if mainly for the purpose of making anti-venom. Beyond their blood, he also keeps hydra flesh in the gate, and he happens to be the only king with a license to cook hydra. To that end, he possesses an ancient Sumerian cooker that can safely render hydra meat edible. Despite this, there is nothing the King of Heroes can do to salvage the nasty, dangerous cooking of Elizabeth Bathory. No amount of herbs and seasonings in his treasury can improve the taste, forcing him to rely on a noble phantasm meant to help him endure poison. To cleanse Gilgamesh's palate, the Gate of Babylon contains the King's Wine, a drink of the finest quality, brewed by the gods. Neither Iskandar nor Artoria can refute the luxury of his wine and its accompanying golden goblets. On the culinary side of things, he also has the tablecloth of the North Wind from European folklore. It produces whatever foods the user chants while spreading it out. Astolfo, one of Charlemagne's paladins, is famous for losing his sense of reason. Part of his journey has him traveling to the moon for a bottle of reason, and it turns out Gilgamesh has his own version of such a bottle. His bottle is able to instead extract a person's reason, rather than restore it. The Gate of Babylon even contains recreational goods, such as swimsuits, many of which are quite risqué. Similarly, he has an entire hot spring he can customize as needed. In summation, through a technicality, Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon is arguably the best noble phantasm a servant can have. Rather than taking a single weapon with him into the afterlife, he instead brings his entire collection as though it were one treasure. Not only does it contain his most treasured Ea and Enkidu, but through it he also has access to the prototypes of countless legendary blades. To complement his luxurious lifestyle, he amasses not only tools of combat, but also leisure. Some might say this is due to his divine right, but I call it arrogant greed. The Gate of Babylon is a testament to how mystery and human belief can be exploited to tremendous benefit. That sort of confidence can be of great benefit to mages as well. Claiming someone else's power as your own is certainly nothing new. A wonderful example is how Ciel, an executor from the Holy Church, appropriates the idea bloods, the principles of dead apostles she defeats. Thus, for our next lesson, I will give an analysis of Ciel's abilities, as well as where they come from. Thanks for watching.
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to Otaku Daikun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all our anime lore, discussions, and Let's Play content.
you can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or a YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like spicy exclusive vids and early access.
As always, celebrate your fandom. I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters. Video Gamer 75, Trodai Connacht, Stephen Elak, Otaku Mom, Jens Bauman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Free Brick, Olympian Doll, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Lunar Works, Link Pendrago, Observer Bellis, James Hewitt, Uncanny EXP, Crow Calum, Saul Soto, Tristan Riggin, Major, Dionysus God of Wine and Madness, Caitlin P, Sogai CH, Vladimirovna, The Taz 96, Kengo X 77, Alistair Bernadotte, and Akakaze Yume. Thank you all so much.